Hello and welcome back to Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett. And, a lot of people ask me, where do I get the topics that I talk about here on Market Shares? And the reality is they come from a wide range of different places, things I see in the news or, obviously I do interviews on here and many different ways in which we come up with content. And one of the ways is some of the folks that I work with will give me a list of, hey, here's some different topics and ideas that you might want to talk about. And one of those topics was, how to communicate with real estate agents in today's kind of modern era, right? And so I was thinking about that. And obviously as loan officers, which most people that watch this are, I think communication is super important. And then I was actually just walking down the hallway and I was reminded of a concept that is not new to any of us, and that is the communication pyramid. And so I thought I would take this topic of, and it's not just, how do you communicate with real estate agents? It's really, how do you communicate with anybody effectively? And I want to reference back to this communications pyramid. Now, I think this was made pretty famous, let's say, pretty well known in our industry by Michael Maher in his book, The 7 Levels of Communication. But I remember the first time that this concept was introduced to me, and it really helped me grasp this idea. And the reason why I want to talk about this on today's episode is because most of the modern forms of communication that we think of today, to be honest with you, they fall into the weakest type of connection that you could possibly have with somebody. So I'm going to walk you through these levels. I know that these aren't new concepts, but I'm hoping that we can position this in a way that maybe turns on a light bulb for you, or maybe makes you think about the next time you're going to make a sales call, or maybe you're a recruiter, or you're a loan officer, or even if you're a real estate agent or anyone else in sales, you think about, how could I take this level of communication and up it to the next level? So let's bring this, old concept and make it fresh and new and top of mind, because it's a really important time for us to do this. We think about reaching out to our database. How are we communicating with the people that we want to reconnect with, knowing that we might have an opportunity as interest rates come down to help them out? Where is your communication falling on the level of effectiveness within this pyramid? So I'm going to use an example. And this was similar to the way this was described to me when I first was introduced to the idea. But let's say that someone really famous is coming to town. Let's say Tony Robbins. So everyone knows who Tony Robbins is. He's a well-known motivational speaker. People pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to attend his events. And he's a pretty well-known person by most people, especially those of us in sales. I mean, if you haven't walked on coals, have you really lived? I mean, seriously, unleash the power. But let me just use Tony Robbins as an example. So let's just say that you were flipping through Facebook or Instagram or the newspaper, if you will, and you just saw an ad that said that Tony Robbins was going to be doing an event in your city, right? You just saw an ad, Tony Robbins is going to be here. That might compel you to go to his event, but it probably won't. I mean, we see advertisements for concerts and all sorts of stuff all the time, and it doesn't necessarily compel us to go. But let's say that instead of an ad, let's say that you got a piece of paper in the mail, right? You got a postcard from Tony Robbins' team, and it was addressed to you. And it said, hey, Tony Robbins is going to be speaking at the local event center. Here's how much tickets are. Would you like to join us? And, if you got a postcard in the mail addressed to you, you might be inclined to go, but it's still a bulk piece of mail. Everyone probably got it. Might not move you too much to go to that event. But let's say that you got an email. You got an email directly from Tony Robbins' team. Hey, Tony Robbins is going to be in town. We want to cordially invite you to this great event. You probably know that this is not a specific email to you, but it's in your email. You're more likely to see it than maybe just some junk mail that came, and that might compel you to possibly go if you get an email. But let's say that someone on Tony Robbins' team sent you a handwritten note and sent it to your office and said, we're having this event in your local town and we'd love to have you join this Tony Robbins event. And you could tell it was handwritten. And you're like, well, okay, well, that's probably going to get my attention. Let's say that Tony Robbins himself wrote you a handwritten note and said, hey, Tony, this is Tony Robbins. I'm doing an event in your local town. I'd love for you to show up. I mean, that's pretty compelling. I mean, we're pretty far now from just a simple post in a newspaper or on social media. But let's say that your phone rings and it's Tony Robbins. Hey, this is Tony Robbins. How are you today? Doing good, Tony. What's up? Hey, I'm doing an event in your local town, and I'd love for you to join us. I know you've been to our events in the past, and we'd love to have you come back. Can we count on seeing you there? I mean, what's the chances I'm going to go to that event if Tony Robbins calls me directly? I mean, we're getting pretty likely, that I'm going to go to this event. But let's say that Tony Robbins walks in the door right now, all 7 foot tall of him, and says, hey, Tony, it's Tony Robbins. I'm having this event next week. I want you to come down. The chances of me saying no to him at that point are highly unlikely. And part of the reason why is the one level of the pyramid that I skipped over, which is events and seminars, right? Tony Robbins is famous because he does events and seminars and speaks to large groups of people, which is a place where you can have a lot of influence. But just that quick example, I think, for me, was a strong reminder that we love to live down here in the lower tiers of this communication thing. We like to send people emails. We use our CRM, and we send people even voice broadcasts, those can be pretty effective if you're pretty careful with your scripting, but a lot of people know that they're, going out to massive people. They don't feel special, right? And it's not unique and it's not specific to them. So I would just ask you, if you're thinking about building relationships with new referral partners, if you're thinking about reconnecting with your past clients, like which mediums are you using for your communication? Because I will tell you that the farther you can move up this pyramid with all of your communications, the likelihood of people converting and actually doing business with you is going to go up substantially. And I just feel like it's an important thing to talk about right now, because I feel like in many ways we've moving down this pyramid, but yet we think we're effective, right? We're putting stuff on social media all the time, and we're like, oh, we got so many clicks and so many likes. I got so many people hearted my thing. It's like, it doesn't mean nothing. It's not unique to them. It's not special. It's no call to action. But it makes us feel like we've done something. We've accomplished something. We've been effective in our communication. And I would argue that if you're not connecting with someone on a personal level, then you're not being effective at all with your communication. So I'm going to encourage you to find this pyramid and print it out like the copy I have right here in front of me. And when you think about reaching out to someone the next time you make a prospecting call, I would look at this and say, how can I take myself 1 or 2 notches higher in this pyramid to make sure that this outreach is as effective as absolutely possible in connecting with that person? And I just want to spend a minute on the top 2. The top 2 of this pyramid are events and seminars and one-on-one meetings, right? So events and seminars is something that all of us should be focused on doing for our real estate partners. If you're a loan officer, you should be putting on events and seminars as often as you can. And that can also include first-time homebuyer classes. It can include bringing in a specialist to put on a class for a group of real estate agents, etc. Or even going to real estate offices and giving presentations. It's a lost art, I think. But whenever you do an event like that, whenever you're the person at the front of the room hosting a group of other people, this one-to-many concept you've heard me talk about, you're putting yourself in a position of authority amongst those people, and it elevates who it is that you are as a professional. And you're thought of as more of a professional because you're the person putting on the event. So using these other mediums of communication to get people to events will be, I think, one of the most impactful things that loan officers can do. So is that part of your strategy today? It should be. And then one-on-one meetings. A lot of very successful loan officers that I know still today are meeting with as many of their clients as they can face-to-face, right? They do an initial call with them, they get their application, and then they schedule a one-on-one meeting to meet them face-to-face. Some of the best producers in the country are doing that with every single one of their clients. It's really one of the main things that they do. They might have a team to help them with everything else. And why do they do that? Well, because when you're one-on-one with somebody, it's the most effective means of building a relationship, and it's the highest level of communication that you can have. And I think so many loan officers today never meet with their clients. And if that's you, I would ask you to reconsider your approach to how it is you're doing this, because you're probably realizing that you could get a lot more referrals, a lot more repeat business. You would have deeper relationships if you took the time to meet with your clients one-on-one. So that's really all I wanted to touch on today, is that communication is something that we all have to do every day in our business. And it's not all created equal. And if you are like many and you find yourselves living in this lower tier of communication, and yet you're not seeing the results in your business that you want, it's not surprising. And I would challenge you to say, how can I move up every form of communication that I do, every attempt at connecting with someone? How can I move them 1 or 2 or 3 rungs up this pyramid in order to have more effective communication, build deeper relationships, and ultimately get more business and more referrals as a result? So hope this was a good reminder. If this is something that you're familiar with, and if it's a new concept to you, I encourage you to maybe even go out and buy Michael Maher's book, The 7 Levels of Communication. There is a version of this book written specifically for the real estate industry. Probably not a bad idea to get that version. And let's all up our game as far as how it is we're connecting with others. Until next time, this is Tony on Market Shares. You know what to do, right? You don't have to like and subscribe. I mean, that would be great if you did, but tell someone about Market Shares. Spread the news if you would. That's my ask of you. And until next time, take care.